Hi, good evening, and I'm so glad that you could join me again tonight for, we're on chapter 9 of Singer on the Sand. And I hope you got your jammies on and your bowl of popcorn or whatever you're snacking on, and you're all cuddled down. And if you remember last week that we ended with the council taking place and they were going to decide what to do about the fire mountain and about Satu. They were kind of disappointed in him. But so tonight we will continue with a witch doctor struggle. And if you remember rightly, Tama, the witch doctor, God was trying to reach him, and he was having a struggle, a within struggle. You know, sometimes your conscience has, you'll struggle with thoughts in your head, and so that's what's happening with Tama. He can't figure out what's happening, but we're going to find out. The Islam teachers had been on Great Sangir for 4 months. Already their teaching had won most of the villages to the Mohammedan religion, but things had not gone the way Tama the Witchman had planned. He had seen that the big red-haired teacher was kind to everyone, even those who did not follow the teaching of his God or come to his house to sing and pray. He treated all the people with kindness and respect. But this was not true of the Islam teachers, especially Guru Mula. No sooner had he brought most of the village folks under his influence than he began to persecute those who chose to worship at the big teacher's house on the sand. Most important of those who followed the Christian teaching was Satu, son of Chief Meriden. Everyone in the village knew that he would be the next chief, and they could not see how it would be possible for him to continue to worship God as the big teacher taught and still become chief. Now Thomas sat with Chief Meriden, Guru Mula, and the other 2 Mohammedan teachers in the new house where Guru Mula lived by himself. Evening had come and the sun had already set over the ridge of hills that ran down the length of Great Sangir like the knobby humps on the big lizard's back. They did not talk much at first. They all watched the mountain. Even when black night came, it was not really dark, for the flaming cone of the volcano lighted the sky with a weird, unearthly light that changed and fluttered with each breath of the fire mountain. As the night winds blew back and forth, Tama could sometimes catch a whiff of the mountain's foul odor. Never in his life could Tama remember such wild and furious thunderings from the volcano, such spurts of red fire and shooting forth of glowing stones. Along with all the other village people, he took comfort from the thought that the mountain was at least 2 miles out in the ocean. At least its stream of fire could not burn their village or harm any of them. The chief had talked of moving the village away to some other part of the island, but none of the people wanted to move. Their gardens and homes were here, and after all, the fire mountain had always been there even in their great-grandfathers' days. Stories of the volcano and the fire spirits had come down to them from as far back as their tribal legends reached into the past. The thing to do was to make strong medicine that would quiet the fire spirits. "Did you call your son Satu to come here tonight?" Guru Mula finally asked the chief. "Yes, he will come. I see him coming now." Satu came up the ladder into the house, and with a polite greeting to the Islam teachers and Tama, he sat down beside his father. His eyes were clear and his skin fresh and healthy looking. Satu had grown fast in the last 6 months and now stood tall and strong, almost as tall as his father. But the thing Tama noticed most about him was a change in his manner. The boy seemed bursting with some secret joy that shone out of him like the light from a coconut lamp. But it was a tenderness, a gentle way of treating everyone, not with arrogance, as was often with the custom of a young chief, but with respect. Tama had watched the boy about his work in his father's garden or in the jungle. He had listened to his songs. Yes, he had learned to make the beautiful sounds like the big teacher. His voice had changed too, Perhaps it was from singing so much. It was deeper now, and there was kindness in it. Among all the children of the village, Satu was the brightest, the most handsome, the most promising. The witchman saw how Chief Meriden's eyes rested on his son with pride and great sadness. The guru spoke to Satu. We have called the young chief here this evening to talk about the worship of the village. I am a worshiper, Satu said without hesitation. I worship God and his son Jesus. I worship according to the teachings of God's holy book. Guru Mula waved his hand as an impatient gesture as though to brush away what Satu had said. Yes, we know that. It is for that reason we have brought you here. It is our wish that you should worship Allah according to the rules of the Mohammedan faith. If it is not fitting that the chief's son should follow a handful of foolish persons who insist in running after the crazy things this red-haired foreigner tells them. No, I will never change. Satu looked at the island teacher with a smile on his handsome face. I couldn't do that. I love my father and my mother, and I belong to our island people. But no, I will never change. You see, Guru Mula's voice was still pleasant. You are now grown to the age where you should be instructed in the way of Islam, and you shall be given a new name. That will show everyone that you follow Allah and his prophet. I don't want a new name, Satu said. We have planned a great name feast at which you will be honored, and after the name feast, all the people will respect you as young chief, and you will be greatly favored by all. Satu looked at the circle of faces around him, but Tama could not detect any hesitation or fear in his glance. You must all excuse me now. He rose to leave. I shall be late for the singing. I never miss, you know. Wait, wait! The voice of Guru Mula was harsh now, and his eyes, no longer smiling, glared at the boy. You will be sorry for this. Your family have all chosen to follow the Prophet. You cannot defy Islam. If worshipping God according to his own holy book is defiance of Islam, then I defy Islam. Satu's face did not lose its smile nor his voice its gentleness, but as he hurried down the steps of the ladder, it seemed to Tama that he stood straighter, held his head up higher, and Tama watched him as he disappeared in the shadows that crept darkly up the hill. For a moment, Satu left there with silence in their room. Chief Meriden sat bowed forward as though to comfort some inner pain that tormented him. Tama himself felt his stomach twist and wiggle inside him like a wounded animal. For an instant, a big, bright thought pushed itself into his mind. Gladness had gone out of this room with Satu. There was no joy or happiness among the men who sat there on the floor. There was only hate, anger, and evil planning here. For just a moment, Thomas touched the edge of something so great and joyous that he drew back in alarm. Then he thought of little Marta, her bright eyes shining with gladness and trust. He thought of the big teacher who had never spoken an unkind word to anyone in the village. Tama began to wish with his whole heart that he had never thought of bringing Islam teachers to Great Sangir. The big thought passed, and Thomas slumped on his mat. He was caught now, caught in the net he had woven himself. Something more wicked than anything he had ever touched with his strongest charms was building up in this room, and he must listen and accept. There's only one thing to do, Guru Mula's voice was smooth again. After all, the boy can never be chief. He mocks at your authority, both of you. He gave Tama a sharp look. He leads the village people who follow the red-haired teacher. He is already worse than dead to you. I have a plan. Then the smooth voice went on to unfold a scheme that made Tama tremble, while Chief Meriden sat there with his head in his hands as though turned to stone among them. You have a number of fishing boats down on the island. and on quiet nights you sometimes go out to fish. Is this not true? Tomorrow night you will go and take Satu with you. You will put him ashore at the fire mount and leave him there. No, no, it was the chief's strangled voice speaking through his hands still pressed to his face. Oh, we will not abandon him there. No, this is just to be a lesson to him. There he will see how angry the fire spirits are, and he will understand that unless we come to bring him home, he is lost. Don't you see? I think he might be persuaded. Still, Chief Meriton did not uncover his face, and it seemed to Tama that his shoulders sagged and shrank till he looked like a very old man, although the chief was still young. Again Tama felt such a wave of regret surge through him that he could scarcely restrain himself. Why had he ever thought that the Islam teaching would be a good thing for great Sangir? The quiet voice of Guru Mula spoke on. Think now, all of you, is there any other way? We have beaten him and cursed him. We have done everything to change his mind. But the boy's mother, the chief spoke again. I have thought of that, Guru Mula said. You can tell her that the boy fell overboard and you could not find him in the darkness. It does happen, you know. The sharks. Again a long silence filled the room like a loathsome thing. At last Guru Mula continued. I am sure after thinking it over that you will all agree. There is no other way, and it is possible that by this means the mountain spirits may be quieted. Is it not true that in years past, when the fire spirits raged and thundered, your people offered them such sacrifices as this? It is true, Tama whispered. You see, although we do not believe in spirits, only in Allah, still we do not change your old customs. Tama's hands clenched. The wiggling inside his stomach was almost too much now. He could see clearly what was at the back of Guru Mula's plan. But the man went on. Tomorrow evening we will do this. There will be no trouble in getting Satu to go along. He loves to fish, especially if you are along. He fixed his fierce dark eyes on Chief Meriton. I will not go. The chief sat now with his hands in his lap. He spoke in a low, tired voice. I do not want to see it. Surely you... All right, you won't be long. You won't be along, Gola. Gola will go with me. The two of us will be enough, but this thing must be done secretly. No one must know. Thomas stood up. I do not agree to this, he spoke out in a loud voice. I think you are touched with the big teacher's magic too, Guru Mula scoffed. It is not necessary for you to agree. The matter is arranged. The witchman swallowed the explanation of fury that rose in his throat and left the house. He swung along the new trail that led down the hill. His body was shaken by such rage as he had never felt before. He lifted his eyes to the sky, reddened now by the flaming mountain, and knew that he had reached the bottom of everything bitter and miserable. Anger filled him. Anger at the big teacher who had started all of this by coming uninvited to Sangir. Anger against the people who had flocked to this new teaching. Anger against Satu, who had defied him in Islam too. Anger against Guru Mula and the other Islam teachers who were now more cruel than the spirits he invoked with his deadliest witchcraft. And yes, anger against himself. Most of all, anger against himself. He had made too many mistakes, terrible mistakes, and now it was too late to undo them. Now should he warn Satu? No, Satu deserved to be severely punished. Should he warn the big teacher? No, the big teacher was to blame too. With a furious battle raging inside him, the witch doctor lay down on his mat and tried to sleep, but he could not. He got out his charms, but his confidence in them was shaken. The big teacher's magic was stronger than his most powerful charm. Dawn was flushing the sky with a whiter light than the volcano glow when Tama finally slept. And the witch doctor dreamed. He dreamed that he stood alone on the strip of white sand at the base of the fire mountain, and the flame roared above him, and the ground quaked beneath him, and the voices of the deep places in the roots of the sea thundered in his ears. And then he saw a little white boat bumping the shore, where gentle ripples pushed it against the sand. Marta stood in the boat, but she held no paddle in her hand. She held out her arms to him, as she had on that day she was lost in the jungle. In his dream he ran to the white boat and climbed in. Then a splendid brightness enfolded him, and perfect peace filled his heart. He woke and saw that the sun was high in the heavens. It must be almost noon. He moved about the hut with such lightness that he felt he must be half flying. So relieved he was from the dark burdens of the night. He went to the spring and bathed, although it seemed almost improper to be bathing at this time of the day. He felt hungry and cooked a good meal and ate it with such a light heart that often as he ate, he stopped and laughed aloud to himself. Now he knew what he must do. First of all, he must find Marta. It might be that the little child had something important to show him or tell him, something that must be important for him to follow. The witchman never doubted that the dream meant something good. He had never in his life known such gladness, such peace. Could this brightness of peace be the God that the big teacher worshipped? All at once he knew that he had changed, and like Satu, he would never be turned back. No, not for anything. On the beach, not far from the big teacher's house, Tama found Hans and Marta sitting in the shade of a coral rock. They were building a village in the sand, and every few minutes Marta ran out to bring in a shell or a bit of seaweed to arrange the village according to her plan. Tama squatted down on the beach beside the children. "Where is your son, the chief's friend?" he asked. "He went fishing with Gola and Guru Mula." Hans placed a stone carefully in the sand village. A stone with a steep, rough angle that looked like a hut with a steep roof. They intended to go tonight, but the sea is calm today, and the Islam teacher said he knew where to look for fish in the daytime. Hans stood up and pointed to the horizon where a black speck bobbed far out beyond the fire mountain. "He will be back before we sing tonight. He never misses, you know." Did you see how God had changed Tama's heart? And once you have felt God's peace, you don't want to feel anything different. Next week, we learn what the Islam teachers has in store for Satu. So join me again next week for chapter 10 on Satu's victory. Thank you, and remember to say your prayers tonight. And when you say your prayers, pray for our missionaries. Good night.